Hello everyone, this lesson is about the question forms in English. We are going to see how to build interrogative sentences in English, and we'll also learn about the different question words. First, let's distinguish two types of questions. First, the confirmation questions. What are confirmation questions? First of all, they use no question word, so you don't use a question word in a confirmation question. Second, the answer to those questions are always yes, no, or something similar, like maybe, of course, certainly, probably, I don't know, of course, for sure, etc. Two examples: did you see Tom? Can Mary dance flamenco? The second type of questions are the information questions. They use a question word, and the answer is a piece of information, so words or sentences. We really give an actual piece of information. Two examples: where are you going, or what would you like? You can see that those questions both use a question word. Now, let's look at confirmation questions. The sentence structure is the one that you probably know already, the usual one. First of all, the auxiliary, then the subject, the verb, and finally the objects, so the rest of the sentence. Let's have a look at some examples. First one: does Martin play the guitar? So you can see that the first word of the sentence is indeed the auxiliary. The auxiliary does, so which comes from do. Why do we use do? Because the sentence is in the present simple. And you can see that the verb play is in the infinitive, because present simple requires infinitive in an interrogative sentence. Second example: did you see Anne at the party last night? Here we're in the past simple, that's why the auxiliary do becomes did. And again, the verb see is in the infinitive. Next example: were you at school yesterday? It is again a past simple, but we use the verb to be. That's why the verb to be is the auxiliary of the sentence. Next question: can you speak English? Here we have a present simple, but with the auxiliary can. So can is the auxiliary of the question. And last example: are you using your phone? It's a present continuous, that's why the auxiliary is be, and the verb is in the ing form and not the infinitive, because it is a present continuous. Now, let's look at the information questions. First, let's see the question words. I made a table with 3 columns corresponding to the 3 categories of question words. The first column is about adverbs. In the adverbs we have why, when we ask about cause; where, when we ask about place; when we ask about time; and how, when we ask about the manner. The second column is the pronouns. So there are several pronouns that can be used as question words. First is who, when we ask about people; what, about things; which, when we have a limited choice; whose, when we ask about the possessor of something; and how much and how many, when we ask about the quantity. Now the last column has the determiners. They are quite similar to those pronouns, but we will see the difference just later. What, which, whose, and how much and how many. Let's see how those question words behave. First, the adverbs. Question words as adverbs are easy because they have the same sentence structure as before, except that they start with a question word, then with the auxiliary, the subject, the verb, and finally the objects. Let's see a few examples. Why didn't you tell me? Where are your friends going? When was your birthday? And how do I look? So you can see that those sentences have the same structures as the ones we saw before, so the same as the confirmation questions. Now comes the more difficult part of the lesson, the pronouns as question words and the determiners as question words. So what is a pronoun? The pronouns always replace nouns. Okay, you have to keep that in mind throughout this chapter. So the first situation, the question word is an object in the sentence, like grammatically speaking, an object, as opposition to the subject. That's important, as you will see. The structure is the same as before, so question word, auxiliary, subject, verb, and objects. Let's see a few examples. Who did you meet at the party? So who is indeed the object of the sentence. Here is a short illustration of this sentence. So you can see the person at the party, and the following day they ask, who did you meet at the party? Second example, what are you eating? This is quite obvious, so no need to explain. Then, which do you prefer? Here is an illustration again to explain to you the sentence. Next example, whose did you find? So whose asks about the possessor. Here is a short illustration. Next example, how much would you like? How much is used with uncountable words. So here you see some bread, singular, uncountable. And last example, how many did you see? How many is used with countable words, so with plural. Alright, let's move to the next step, not always still with the pronouns, but the second situation, the question word is the subject of the sentence and not the object. So the sentence structure is different. We have first the question word, of course, and then the verb directly. The verb which is in the right tense, so in the tense that you need for the sentence. And then the objects. So no auxiliary here. The verb comes directly after the question word, which is the subject. Let's see. Who offered you the flowers? Here, who is the subject of the person, of the sentence? Who is the person who offered the flowers? As you can see from this picture. Okay, Dan is the person who offered the flowers to the girl. Second sentence, what makes you happy? Again, what is the subject? The thing that makes the person happy. Next example, which comes from China. Next example, whose is the best? Here is again an illustration. So whose and dog is for whose dog. Okay, it's a pronoun, so it replaces dog. How much makes you sick? And last example, how many attacked you? How many is the subject? How many what? In this case, how many dogs? Okay, but we know we talk about dogs, so we don't need to clarify it. Alright, let's move on. Now, let's look at determiners. What are determiners? Determiners are always followed by nouns. Okay, so after a determiner, there is always a noun. Now, the sentence structure depends again on the function of the question word in the sentence. So first, the question word is an object in the sentence. The sentence structure is the same as usual. So the question word, auxiliary, subject, verb, and objects. A few examples. What country would you like to travel to? Don't need to explain. Which photo did you take? Whose shoes are you wearing? How much money did you receive? How many celebrities did you see? So in all those sentences you can see that there is always a subject which is different from the question word. Now the second situation again is when the question word is the subject of the sentence. In this case we have the different sentence structure again, like with pronouns. So we start with the question words and then directly the verb in the right tense again, and finally the objects. What animal scares you the most? Okay, again, what animal is the subject. The verb is scare, and we add an S because it's the present simple, so the verb is not in the infinitive. Which car is yours? Whose dog died yesterday? How much money buys you a house? And how many people came to the party? So you can see that in all those sentences, the question words are the subjects of the sentences. So, let's summarize this lesson. The structure of an interrogative sentence in English is usually the question word, when there is one, the auxiliary, the subject, the verb, and the objects. It is always the case, except when the question word, being a pronoun or a determiner, is the subject of the sentence. In this case, we use a different structure: the question word, the verb in the right tense, and finally, the objects. So this is the end of the lesson. I hope you enjoy it, and see you later in class.